I would like to give a brief statement and then leave. I have other obligations which impede me from participating in the whole show as a guest, which is what was originally intended. I have agreed to speak to the topic of would a revolution in the U.S. empire happen in our lifetimes. This is something I have often pondered in my 23 years of revolutionary activism. In 2021, about 5 months prior to the so-called extradition of Ambassador Alex Saab to Miami, I met with the brother and father of none other than Julian Assange in that very city, and talked to them of Saab, who was held in Cape Berry at the time. The question I asked publicly in the Q&A to Assange's father was if his son knew what would happen to him, the torture, the imprisonment, the slander. Would he have still revealed what he revealed? His response was he would have tried to prevent his son from doing it, but if he showed him what would have happened in the looking glass, he had no doubt his son would still do it. This is the essence of a revolutionary. Even if we know we will lose, even if we know we will be sacrificed, as we are on the verge currently of what looks like a so-called extradition of this great man, Assange, we will still struggle. So should it not be whether we win that is the main consideration, but if the seeds will be planted for future generations, whether we see the vision, the new society, in our lifetimes or not. We may have the element of surprise, the upper hand, and make the right moves where I am pleasantly surprised and see the revolution in my lifetime. However, I no longer care if I will see it. I care that seeds for fundamental change will happen. And I have seen generational narrative changes in the consciousness of the people, as reflected in polls, since my struggle at Occupy in my lifetime, which was a movement both our guests were in as well. Many leftists today in their 30s were old enough to have taken part in it. Occupy was part of an international current at the time being seen in the Middle East, Europe, and Latin America in particular. When I was growing up long before Occupy, I was made fun of for having Payless shoes. Today in schools we see those who wear Nikes are made fun of for being bougie. This word derives from the French word bourgeois, as us revolutionaries have called the elites or upper classes for generations. Indeed, the tables have turned. Speaking of money and politics being bad is no longer atypical. Figures as high as 90% of the youth have rejected capitalism in recent years. I reside in a fascist state with a history of resistance that not only covers up slavery, but also the Holocaust, which I witnessed firsthand as a sub. Despite of this, Florida youth are radicalizing, in the good sense of the word, from TikTok and other outlets showing them the truth, despite ongoing censorship efforts. What was considered extreme in my high school days is now a normal, non-controversial view, as more and more young minds study socialism and liberation movements, looking how to apply the history today. Comandante Fidel Castro, once when asked what a revolution was, as it is likely the Inquisitor presumed he would go into a long discourse, as he typically did, Fidel gave an answer which was incredibly concise and accurate. A revolution, he stated, is a struggle to the death between the past and the future. He then went on to briefly explain that although revolutions in left circles are often seen as glorious, they are no bed of roses. They require struggle. This may be one of my last public addresses for a while. The obligations of life currently have complicated my activism. I will make my final words count. Revolutions are not for the soft at heart, and although the bourgeois tend to consider poets soft, some of the greatest revolutionaries were poets, such as Pablo Neruda, who was assassinated by Pinochet after the fall of that great socialist Chilean, Allende, as countless other leftists were in the continent. The weak tend to become traitors. The strong end up dying or survive to fight another day. I end this statement with the words of Che Guevara, which was his probable response to a question on whether he hated the gringos, which of course I knew he would negate. His grandfather was born in the U.S., and his issue was with the imperial regime here, not the people. Envy I have for the North Americans, for their struggle is the most important, within the belly of the beast itself.
Thank you so much, Mr.